Are you tired of living in fear? There is light at the end of the tunnel. Reclaim Fiji. Vote SODELPA. Vote 317.
So Mr. Beddoes, firstly, thank you very much. I know you've got a very hectic and busy schedule knowing that elections is just barely a month away. Thank you for giving us a chance to interview you and about your campaign and probably on some of the stand taken by SODELPA more recently. Probably the first question I'd like to ask you is SODELPA has about 5 non-iTaukei candidates, including you. How do you campaign knowing that SODELPA is very pro-indigenous and you have a lot of your supporters who are, of the minority group or other races? How do you campaign knowing that SODELPA is always known for being very pro-indigenous for these upcoming elections?
Well, I think in fairness to SODELPA and the indigenous people, let's also understand that the NFP, the Labour, and now PDP is, well, not so much PDP, are known to be representative of the Indo-Fijian community. No one's had any issues with that. So I don't see why anybody has an issue or should have an issue with the fact that SODELPA is predominantly Fijian-based. But we also must understand that given where we have been in the past with regards to the electoral system, this is a natural consequence of that. That said, I campaign as much in the villages to the Taukei community as I have been doing, as I am doing with the minority community. My role as a national nominee is to go over all of that, and I have had Indo-Fijian members attending my meetings, I've had Fijian members, and I've had minority members. So our role as a national candidate is to cover all of the communities, and obviously any political party that does not work towards its normal base need to have their head examined, because the reality is you should go where your core base is first. And I think that should explain to you how I do it. We go in wherever it is that we need to go. So the members who are working in the Fijian area or Indian areas or with me as minority areas, we do all of them. And if they need us to be with them in a particular village or a particular pocket meeting somewhere, then if we can schedule it in, we're there as well. So we're covering everything.
Mr. Beddoes, as a non-iTaukei member of the SODELPA party, of recent weeks there's been a lot of heat on SODELPA, the outbursts we say that Qarase has made. One of Qarase's comments is that God has given this land for Fijians and not for other races. Now, as a non-iTaukei member of the party, how do you react to such a comment?
First of all, I don't consider what Mr. Qarase has been saying in his pocket meetings as an outburst. He's been trying to clarify the differential between indigenous rights and citizens' rights. His interpretation that because the Taukei community were the first here to settle and that therefore is a gift of God, that's his interpretation, and he's more than entitled to that interpretation of it. The indigenous people are the indigenous people of Fiji, and everybody should understand that, and I think the problem is the media is either skewing the interpretation or they're blurring the lines, okay? And what I want to say here and now, that there is a distinct difference between indigenous rights, citizens' rights, and equal citizenry, as is highlighted in the 2013 Constitution. These are very distinct differences. And indigenous rights, and our Taukei community, our indigenous people, is an internationally recognized right. It's protected under the ILO and the UN declarations. And it's very clear what it says about indigenous rights. And this is not unique to the Fijian people, the Taukei community here. It's every indigenous population on the planet. My heritage, my ancestry comes from Wales. So my own origins of birth, somewhere in Wales, has an indigenous population of Wales, and they are covered by that. Your ancestors came from India. What part of India did they come from, may I ask? You would know, you should know, you should research. It's your history. It's where you come from, it's what you are. The point I'm making here is there will be indigenous peoples in that area of India that you come from, and they too are protected by the very same law. So we should not confuse indigenous rights with our citizen rights. And I think Mr. Qarase, I've seen the transcripts, and I believe he was totally misquoted, and he was trying to explain the difference. And if you're doing it in a political setting, in a village or in a settlement somewhere, you're choosing words that you're trying to make the differential. And it's unfortunate that the media have taken it and propelled it to be something that it really wasn't.
All right. I understand what you're saying, Mr. Beddoes, but personally, as a politician standing for the elections, do you support Qarase's comment on the comments that he made that the land has been given by God to Fijians? Mr.
Qarase is one citizen in Fiji. And in his explanation, as I just said, about the differential between the Taukei landowners and other citizens, he used the description that it was given to them by God. Well, they are the first settlers. We all, as Christians, know that God created this earth. So therefore, to allow he did not bring in a big storm to wash out the indigenous people when they first landed here, did they? So therefore, by his consent, they are the first settlers. And that's his interpretation. And I do not see anything wrong with that interpretation. And I am a fifth-generation Fiji citizen, and I have no worries, no problems with that. And as again, we're highlighting something that really is a personal opinion by an individual trying to explain the differential between indigenous rights and citizen rights.
So you support his view?
Yes.
Mr. Beddoes, Qarase has made another statement where he's referring to numbers on the ballot paper as being taken from the Quran. Isn't this being racist, you'd say? That he's,
how is it racist to quote, hang on, how is it racist to make a reference to the Quran? I have not seen anywhere that Mr. Qarase criticized the Quran, ridiculed the Quran, or said anything derogatory about the Quran. He was simply trying to ask and understand why start at 135. Okay, that's the question. It's not about the Quran. I've also looked in the Bible to look at how many verses there are starting with 135. No problem with that. And why would you say that somebody, if I refer to the Quran, I'm being a racist? Why is that? Why do you think that? But it's my question to you. Why do you think it's racist?
I was saying he's racist because he's referring to ballot paper numbers, which has nothing to do with the Quran, and saying that it's extracts from...
Well, I think that for you to understand where Mr. Qarase is coming from, you need to read the thesis of Mr. Khaiyum. If you read his thesis, have you read his thesis? Then I recommend everybody in Fiji read it. Because if you read his thesis, it will explain to you why all these changes have occurred, especially to the Fijian community. Okay, if you read his thesis. And curiosity of any human being, and I was sitting in a conversation with Mr. Qarase, and our curiosity about why start with 135. Mr. Khaiyum, the supervisor of election, and the chairman of the Electoral Commission all say that it was a random selection of a number. Well, I say that's a rather odd number to be random. Why not start with 50? Why not start with 100 or 200? And what I do know about Mr. Khaiyum is he is not a random person, right? He is a purpose-driven individual. And therefore, everything he does is calculated to have an effect. Now, he's a man who represents the Muslim faith. The supervisor of election represents the Muslim faith. So let's check out their Bible first, and their Bible is the Quran. We Googled 135 and out came this verse. Now, if you look at the context in which Mr. Qarase was talking about this, he wasn't criticizing the Quran or the Muslim faith or anybody else. He was simply saying that verse, that particular verse 135, is about justice. Nothing wrong with that verse. In fact, it's a significant verse to have. It's about justice. And the context in which Mr. Qarase was speaking was, well, here they have, if it is in fact the case, a verse about justice and the need for us to be just, when this is the most unjust regime. That's the context in which he was saying it. There is nothing racial. He made no racial overtones about the Quran. And let's not forget, FBC, your TV station, had one of your Muslim speakers earlier on in the bit on a Sunday program, and he criticized the Christian faith. And in fact, he criticized God. That's racist. But nothing was done. Not by the minister responsible, Mr. Khaiyum, the CEO of the FBC, Mr. Khaiyum again. Of course, it's purely coincidental. And what the gentleman said about Christianity, he was being very racist. No one kicked up a fuss. Mr. Qarase is referring to the verse in the Quran and the fact that it was about justice, and how odd that they should have justice as that number. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with the number. We're trying to understand why the number. There is a difference. And he says, and I repeat again, all he said was, this is about justice, and the regime has been everything but a just government. And that's the context in which he said it. Nothing racial in it.
I'll go back to when you said if I had read the thesis. So SODELPA's read Khaiyum's thesis and...
For your information, the thesis is out on the line, and I've read through it. I've glossed over it, and I'm particularly interested in his conclusions. And in actual fact, I'm going around. So you want to make it public? You go right ahead. I'm telling all the iTaukei members of this country, read that thesis. If you have access to it, read it. Then you can understand the line of questioning which Mr. Qarase decided to take. Because if you were a iTaukei community member, you should be concerned. And you and I are not. So it doesn't affect us as much. But I believe we should all be concerned. Because, so if we have an unsettled and an unhappy majority population in Fiji, that does not augur well for a unified and a progressive Fiji in the future. So people need to understand, where is all this coming from? Because I need to know. Why? Why have all these things occurred? And in particular, no other community in this country, not my minority community, not the Indo-Fijian community, have been targeted to nearly the extent, to anywhere near the extent to which the iTaukei community have. And I oppose it, I'm angered by it, and I'm disappointed in it, and I'm telling everybody I can meet to wake up. Open up your eyes and open up your ears and see what's actually going on. Because at the end of the day, it's going to affect and impact on all of us.
Mr. Beddoes, just going back to the numbers that are on the ballot paper 135, why would SODELPA first go to the Quran and check the verse?
Excuse me, not SODELPA. Not SODELPA. Mr. Qarase individually, Mick Beddoes individually. And I have no doubt anybody else. Why go to the Quran? I think I already told you. The minister driving all this is a Muslim. The supervisor of elections is a Muslim. So if there were a Christian in charge of that, I would go to the Bible first. And we know there's lots of verses in the Bible. We don't read the Quran every day, so out of curiosity, we said, let's have a look at the 135 in the Quran. And that's what we did. That's all it is. It is nothing about anything else other than an act of curiosity. And the curiosity is, well, 135 is an odd number to start with. And that raises my curiosity. And maybe you don't. But when I have my doubts about what something is doing, I ask the question, why? And I don't ask it once. I keep asking until I get to the bottom of it. And that's my nature. So I've done it. And I can understand where Mr. Qarase is coming from, because I know he's done it as well. We have discussed this. And again, I want to emphasize, where's the racial connotation here? Why can't I look in the Quran? Right? Why can't I? Is there something prohibiting me? I can Google the Quran online, I can Google the Bible online, you can do anybody can. So it's accessible to everybody. The reason for going to the Quran first was because the people in charge of the election per se, the ones that would influence the decision to pick the number in the first place, both come from the same faith. So it stands to reason that you would check there first. If there was nothing untoward about the number, check the Bible. Check somewhere. Where's this number from? And then if we didn't find anything significant, we would have put it away and said, well, fair enough, they probably did get it randomly. But I am not convinced, knowing Mr. Khaiyum, as I said, is a purpose-driven individual, that he would have picked that number randomly. And I still believe that today, regardless of what they say.
Do you believe we should be free to make our own choices? There is light at the end of the tunnel. Reclaim Fiji. Vote SODELPA. Vote 317.
So will the numbers help them in whatever they're trying to do?
It's not so much will the numbers help them. I don't think that has anything to do with it. Whether you started at 135 or whether you started at 100 or whether you started at 50, I don't know that it's going to make any difference. I think the system itself is a stupid system, and it is not friendly for voters. It is specifically designed to frustrate and make it difficult for the voters of Fiji. So it is not being done in the best interest of the people of Fiji, neither has it been prepared so that the majority of the people can vote with ease and freely express themselves. It is done to disrupt the people of Fiji's opportunity to have a free and fair election. So nothing that they've done so far would tell me that they're doing it in the best interest of the people of Fiji. Rather, they're doing it in the best interest of a certain party and of certain regime, which is the one in power now.
Mr. Beddoes, just going back to Qarase's comments and statements over the last few weeks, a lot of political parties have come out, hit back at SODELPA for allowing Qarase to make comments, specifically on where he's mentioned that the numbers are extracted from the Quran, and also on his comments where he's saying that God has given this land for Fijians. You know, what's your feeling about this, that political parties are now hitting back at SODELPA?
My answer to that is I feel that the political parties who are doing that are playing the game as orchestrated by Qorvis. And Qorvis is the US PR company, hired by this regime. They've already received $3 million+ I have no doubt that they've received a lot more. Now, my point, I'll throw the question back at you. You're more concerned about we're calling Mr. Qarase a racist for making a reference to the Quran or a verse in the Quran when he made no racial connotation or made no comment. And we're more concerned about him saying in his interpretation that God gave the land of Fiji to the indigenous people. But no one wants to know why the 13 families who lost their sons or their fathers or their uncles in these coups have had no redress. Why this regime under Frank Bainimarama and Khaiyum, who were responsible, who held the reins of responsibility at the time of this, have not shown any remorse or concern to those people about their loss. They have not got closure. There is no compensation. Why isn't anybody asking about the coup? They have committed a capital crime, these people. And the Qorvis strategy is to force everybody and make everybody discuss the petty stuff that you're talking to me about so that they don't have to answer for their wrongdoing. That's the truth of the matter. All right? So as far as I'm concerned, the political parties can ramble all they want about whether Mr. Qarase was right or wrong. Who's going to be the judge here? Right? The regime who's committed treason, who's committed a capital crime, and are now trying to present themselves as the go-to guys that you need to put in for another 4 years. I'm relying on the fact that the people of Fiji are not that silly, and they can see through this facade. And they should remember that this is driven by Qorvis, and Qorvis is paid to make sure they project an image of these people. Thousands of people lost their jobs. Hundreds of families have been destroyed. Right? The coups have cost us more than $10 billion. And we're not talking about it in these elections. The people responsible for it are not talking about it. I mean, this is ridiculous. And the media are responsible for this because you're zooming in on the little petty stuff. You're not talking about the real issues that we should be talking about. Yes, employment, poverty, squatter settlements, cost of living are very important issues. But the overriding issue is the fact that the people responsible for all of our hardship who committed a capital crime on December the 5th, 2006, are entering these elections, hiding behind an immunity decree that covers them from any crimes that they have committed. Mind you, right up until today, not just till today, and any crimes that they may commit in the future until the first sitting of Parliament. And if you want to go to the subject of equal citizenry, I got a thing or two to tell you about that as well.
How damaging do you think that Qarase's statements have been to the campaign? People maybe at your campaigns have been questioning his remarks. Has it affected your campaign? Has it affected the other non-iTaukei candidates who are standing for elections?
Not at all. Not at all. Obviously, the opponents to SODELPA are gathering a bit of steam and using it and are pouncing. Like I say, they're pouncing on these issues. There was no racial remark made. There was no racial connotation made. And the people who are making these statements or attacking SODELPA because of Mr. Qarase's statement obviously don't know the difference between indigenous rights and citizens' rights. And I urge them, please, Google, go online, check out the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And when you read this document, you know that Mr. Qarase was explaining how that they are different. But it's very clearly spelled out there that they are different in that context. When it comes to equal rights of our citizens here in Fiji, we are supposed to be all equal under the law. All citizens, Taukei, Indo-Fijians, ourselves, we are equal under the law. We should all be treated equally under the law. But this 2013 Constitution, which Frank Bainimarama waves around every day that he has a chance to, and I don't think he's actually read it, because if he did, he wouldn't be doing it so often. But in this Constitution, it makes it very clear as day that there is no such thing as equal citizenry, even though they keep referring to it, and with the help of the media, they keep trying to say that we all have equal citizenry. Yes, in a type print in this book, it means nothing on the ground because it doesn't apply. And they are more equal and more protected than you and I, all right? For all the crimes they have committed, they don't have to answer to anybody. And they can go and stand for elections. And in the papers today, although I haven't seen it, they're having a go at Mr. Chaudhry and Mr. Qarase as the two former prime ministers. They're now been disallowed to stand in election, and people are thinking it's okay. And these two were democratically elected, and they can't stand for what I call misdemeanors. They haven't committed a capital crime, and yet the people who committed a capital crime and who have protected themselves with an entrenched immunity in this book, and then who also in the same chapter 10 on immunity in this Constitution disallow you or me and the families of the 13 people who have died the opportunity to claim redress against the state. And they are hiding behind an immunity, won't face the crimes that they committed, and they can stand for election. That is a joke, that is a farce, and it's a poor reflection on us as a community that we tolerate this nonsense.
Mr. Beddoes, there's like I had asked you earlier, there's been a backlash from political parties over these comments by Qarase. I mean, some of these political parties, you now say, are using it for their political gain, attract more votes by saying that their party is a more multicultural or equal citizenry approach. What's your comment on these political parties now starting that backlash?
They're most welcome to do that, because they're appealing to the electorate, and they may personally disagree with Mr. Qarase. That is their right to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. Mr. Chaudhry came out and expressed his concerns about what some of the commentary is. And that's based on what one reads in the newspaper. And I've just explained to you that what actually did take place is quite different, okay? So if one is going to comment on what one reads, especially in The Sun, then there's a 99.9% chance that you're going to be barking up the wrong tree because it's being skewed. The point I'm making is all of the leaders, including Mr. Chaudhry and the Labour Party, who we're working as a partnership. We're individually doing our thing today, but there's a understanding of a coalition after the election. He's entitled to disagree. And I think people are getting this all wrong. As a society, as human beings, I mean, at home, in your home, you mean there's no disagreement in your family? You don't have arguments and disputes about certain issues? Of course we do. That's human nature. There's absolutely nothing wrong with different political parties having a different viewpoint to the issue at hand. It's up to the voter to disseminate that information and decide, well, I think this guy's telling the truth, and yeah, maybe they're exaggerating. So we're all entitled to our opinion, and it does not necessarily mean that we always have to agree.
Mr. Beddoes, again back to Qarase's comments. Do you think that this will determine the elections? The two statements that he's made, and you know, the political parties have been going at it. There's been a lot of heat on SODELPA. Will these two comments determine?
I am sure that Frank Bainimarama would love to think that these two, as long as they push on these two issues, that'll determine the outcome. I'm happy to tell you that going around, as I have been doing, to the different areas and talking to the people, most of the people see through this. Although I have to give credit to the Baikai regime, okay? They have been quite successful, thanks to Qorvis, of plastering the whole country with these lies. You know what I mean? It's pretty extensive, the amount of lies and the impact that it has on people. All right? And people, and you can understand why. Because people shouldn't be thinking that their government is going to lie to them. People think that their government is there to do the best for them. What we remind them that this is a government that came through the back door. It's not an elected government. It has no mandate. But the advantage that they've given us now, which they don't seem to realize, and even Qorvis, for all the millions that they've paid, in fact, done us a big favor in this election. Because all we do is we come along like a little group, and we have our little pocket meeting, and I have a USB, and it's full of the truth, and I plug it into that little meeting, and just like a virus in a computer system, it spreads like wildfire, and away the message goes. Okay? So while they may think that they're dominating the whole picture, they're giving us a unique opportunity to actually get our message out. And I can assure you, when people hear the truth, and we have been distributing this now non-stop and going everywhere, the feeling about Fiji First drops like a big, heavy lead balloon. So, if they think this is going to determine the outcome, good luck to them. I don't happen to agree with them, but then again, that's just my opinion.
Mr. Beddoes, SODELPA is bringing back the controversial Qoliqoli bill. What's your view on that? I mean, you've been the opposition leader prior to 2006. You must have opposed it in 2006.
I not only opposed it, I opposed it vigorously. I opposed it vigorously then. However, just prior to the 2006 coup, I did what an elected person should do. I started to have dialogue with Mr. Qarase. You see, the Qoliqoli, all of us who are Fiji citizens were born and raised knowing about the Qoliqoli. And the idea of the Qoliqoli bill was to try and legalize and set up some framework by which it can be governed. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. What concerned me about the Qoliqoli bill of old was it created another layer of administrative authority, and there were some ridiculous things in there that they were going to confiscate your catch and this and that if it's fishing and all this other stuff. But every citizen in this country, certainly I know, the Qoliqoli of the landowners, and we respect that. Now, in order to create a framework, and the other problem with it, because there is no framework in place to govern its management and its use, it's subject to abuse. And you would have heard before, always there's this case where landowners come in demanding this, demanding that, etc. And it was very untidy. The Qoliqoli bill moving forward in the future that we're talking about is one that will address it properly. So it's very clear and precise, and then it shows how we will deal with the Qoliqoli in terms of the iTaukei and then the users of the Qoliqoli. That's what is going to happen. So I'm grateful that I'm now in the very party that I opposed in the last election. I'm with the same team, and I will have an input, no doubt. Me and my other colleagues, national colleagues, will have an input with the SODELPA management on the structure of how that Qoliqoli bill will take place. And it will be there to take care of and ensure we can properly manage this part of the rights of indigenous people without without causing an uproar with the other communities. That's what is going to happen, and that's why I have no problem with it this time around.
So what you're basically saying, Mr. Beddoes, is although you opposed it when you were in opposition and leader of the opposition, you're now supporting moves to bring it back?
No. Just let's get one thing straight. I opposed the Qoliqoli bill in the form in which it was presented. Okay? The Qoliqoli bill, I have never had an issue with. The Qoliqoli itself, as a kid growing up here, all of us know what the Qoliqoli is all about. So we understand that. But there has never been any structure in place to effectively manage it, to ensure there's no disputes between the owner and the user and all these other things. And that was occurring on a regular basis. So I have no issue with a legislation being brought in that takes care of this, so that an investor coming in is clear on what the rules of the Qoliqoli are, and the landowners are clear, and the users are clear. That's important for us to have. There's nothing wrong with it. Now, the Qoliqoli bill, if you're referring to the one that was built, that's not the bill that's coming in. A Qoliqoli bill will be developed to ensure that this thing is done correctly. And we are going to have a say in that as members of the SODELPA party.
Are you finding it hard to get a job? There is light at the end of the tunnel. Reclaim Fiji. Vote SODELPA. Vote 317.
Mr. Beddoes, on your political campaign now, you are a veteran politician yourself. You've been the opposition leader. You were with the United People's Party, which has stopped. Now you've joined SODELPA. How has that changed the way that you used to campaign in previous years, and now with a new political party in a new environment?
Well, you see, there were criticisms, and a lot of people are saying, well, this guy only won in his constituency, so therefore, now when you're in an open constituency, he's going to get thrashed. Hey, I may lose this election. I'm a realist. However, there's the other side of the coin. A lot of people supported me from all over the country, but couldn't vote for me before. Okay, this is one tick I'll give to Bai Kai, the fact that others in the country can vote for me. So if I play my cards right and I remain consistent in what I stand for and what I do, and I have done that, I have not changed my position, and I stand for the rule of law. I still speak out against all the wrongdoings that go on. I have never altered up in that. So I haven't really tripped badly enough that people would reject me outright. So I am looking forward to the opportunity where other people from the Indian community, the Fijian community, can actually vote for me now, whereas before they couldn't. So how has it been different for me? It hasn't really been that much different, because I'm covering. Before, I used to go and talk in villages and settlements, and wherever I'm invited to go and talk, I'll go and talk. And even in my meetings before, when I did it on the United People's Party banner, people from all community would ask to come to my meetings, and I welcomed them. When I went to Parliament as the member for West Central General, the day after I went to Parliament, until the coup happened, I served any citizen came to Parliament seeking my help. And let me tell you, the vast majority of the people seeking my help when I was in Parliament came from the Fijian and Indo-Fijian community. And I took care of whatever issues they brought before me. Because once you go to Parliament, I'm there representing the people, not my community. Yes, my community, but not just my community. I represent all the people. So for me, this transition, it's good to be part of a bigger structure, as I once was with the Alliance, because the future of the minority people will be dependent on our ability to assimilate and get involved with the larger communities in Fiji. And this is a first step coming to SODELPA. And me and the team are going around encouraging Indian members to come in and join, so we can create that truly multiracial party of all the communities in the one. And then we're talking about the issues. And by us expanding the membership of SODELPA, by all coming on board, then this tag that everybody seems to make on SODELPA as being a predominantly Fijian base, it will disappear. So the DNA of SODELPA will be changing, and its policies will have to reflect its membership. And its membership is already diverse now, and it's moving along. And I have had the privilege of working with Rote Mumukepa, and we have an excellent person who is a capable Prime Minister and the kind of person that we need moving forward. And I work with the executives of SODELPA, and they're very accommodating. So I don't even hold a position, and yet they respect. They respect the minority community that I represent, and they respect our point of views. And I'm joined now by Carl Smith, so there's a couple of us, plus my colleagues from the Indian community, and we may be a few, but trust me, when we have a thing or two to say, everybody listens, and that's what you need, and our views are welcome, and it makes me feel very comfortable where we are right now. And the response so far as we've gone, we accept the fact. This is a David and Goliath challenge for us. There's no doubt about it. Everything is stacked against us. The media is against us. The funding is against us. The regime is against us. Everything is against us. But I think you and I both know what the ending story was on the David and Goliath battle. Right? Okay. Goliath fell. And that's the most important thing for people to understand. It doesn't matter the size of your opposition. It matters for me that we tell the people the truth. And they're smart enough to know the difference. And I'm confident enough that that's what it is. And that's all I'm giving out, the truth and the facts. And my facts are all based on documentation that people can check out themselves. And once we start handing this out, like I told you, their views and feelings about Fiji First drop like a lead balloon. And and so should it drop. And the other point I want to make, I can guarantee you that most of the members of the Fiji First haven't read their constitution. Because if they have read the Fiji First Constitution, they would realize they have no say. They are irrelevant. Right? They are totally irrelevant. That only 2 people make all the decisions in the 3 committees that manage the party. And the best part is when that party winds up, after it's paid its debts, the remaining assets don't get shared among all the financial members of that party like most political parties do. Their remaining assets get transferred to a company, organization, or an entity that 2 people decide is similar to the views of Fiji First, and that's the end of it. And they can do that even before they wind up. So the membership has no say. They don't receive any of the funds that they've raised and given back to them. It's gone. It's controlled totally by 2 people, in the same way this country is controlled today. And Fiji First, everywhere I'm going, I'm telling the Fiji First people, read your constitution. The minute you finish reading it, you will stop being a member.
So, Mr. Beddoes, you earlier during that statement, you were saying that SODELPA is now moving away from being more of an indigenous dominated party to being a multicultural party with more multicultural people, background people coming into the party. Mm-hmm. So are you saying that SODELPA is moving away from that concept to a more multicultural?
SODELPA is today multicultural, multi-ethnic in its makeup. Okay? The tag of it being indigenous is coming from the media and the detractors. Okay? But let's not get carried away with what I'm saying, and let's be realistic. Fijians are the majority population. And SODELPA and the former SDL, with its majority indigenous support, will obviously, the iTaukei will continue to be the majority within the party. However, there are more of us joining it from the Indian and minority communities. So as a consequence of this, if people, I'm saying it in the context of people saying that, you know, it's for the Fijians, well, I'm telling them that by joining and becoming a financial member of SODELPA, even if they were pushing a line, which they are not, if they were pushing a line that was more inclined to support indigenous people, they can't do that forever because they have to look back at their membership, and it's no longer just okay. So by virtue of the fact that other communities are joining it, the policies will have to be altered to reflect its new membership. So that in itself is a progression that is occurring right now, today. And people should not view, people who view SODELPA as Fijian actually are wrong. It's not that at all.
Mr. Beddoes, these elections you are with a new political party. Like you said, you're a realist. And if you lose these elections, will you retire from politics?
This is my last effort to get into Parliament. I was elected the second time in 2006, and the coup cut short my chance to deliver to the people for a second term. And I always ever wanted to just have 2 terms, serve 2 terms. Yes, immediately, if I didn't make it this time, that's fine. I would be happy to retire from politics and concentrate on my grandchildren and myself for a change. Because when you go to Parliament, I know there's always the connotation that you go there to make money. No, you lose money when you go. And you don't go there for the money, you go there to serve the people, and that's why I went to Parliament, and that's why I want to go and complete my term if I can this time around. The other reason I want to go to as well, there's going to be a lot of younger, new blood in there, and there's a requirement for some continuity, so I can help in whichever way I want. And as soon as if I am successful and go in, if I'm able to identify somebody and who's then putting their hand up and wanting to come forward, and at an appropriate time, I'd be more than happy to step aside when the time comes. My reason, again, like I say, I'm doing this because I feel I need to. Fiji's at the crossroads. I want to give Fiji the same kind of. I want Fiji to go back to the way I grew up in it. It was a great place to grow up in, we had difficulties. There's no question about it. But people were happy, and I want to see a happy population. We're a divided nation right now, and that's not going to help us anywhere. Economically, any way you want, it's not going to help us. We need to get our people together, and I want to do everything that I can to try and make sure that we can deliver a Fiji that our children and our grandchildren can feel really good about growing up in, getting educated, and then, taking on the challenges that lay ahead of them. That's the reason why I want to. But when the time comes, more than happy to call it a day and to concentrate on the more important things that are confronting me in my life, and that is my grandchildren and my family, and enjoy whatever rest of the time I'm allowed to have on this planet.
Mr. Beddoes, just a few more questions before we wrap up this interview. I'll take you back to Qarase's comments.
Yes.
Have you been in touch with Qarase to find out what he said because of what was being printed and with the political parties having a go at SODELPA? Yes,
of course. I speak to Mr. Qarase already a couple of times while he's in the U.S. We both know that he's been misquoted. Mr. Qarase has told me that if I feel it necessary to make a statement while he's away, go right ahead. I have his permission to do that. I haven't found the need for me to do that at this stage. That's why I'm grateful that you coming to interview me, and I hope the explanation regarding that is done. And I've seen the videotapes of him talking and what he was trying to say, and I've listened to the actual audio. And again, one of the other things that were, we wanting, SODELPA wants a Christian state. SODELPA has never said they want a Christian state. That's the interpretation that the media has put on it, that we want a Christian state. We're talking about creating a government that's based on Christian values and principles. What's wrong with that? Those are good, sound principles. And Mr. Qarase's comments about the Christianity was in the context that the missionaries came here in the early stage. They converted the cannibalism that existed at the time into Christianity. So they played an important role. It's nothing to do with Christianity as the faith. It's to do with the principles within that faith. So the values and the principles, those are good base principles for anybody to live on. And the matter of fact is that the majority of the people in this country belong to the Christian faith. So there's nothing wrong with that, for him to make a comment on. He never said Christian state. The manifesto of SODELPA does not state it. And there's been no question about it. The constitution of the SODELPA doesn't state it. What we're saying is that the SODELPA government will govern based on the values and principles of Christianity. It's the values and principles that Christianity preaches. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's a good, solid foundation. And we shouldn't have to be apologizing for that. Now, nowhere in it does it stop any faith, whether it's the Muslim faith, the Hindu faith, Buddha, or any other religion, from practicing. Everybody's free to do that. But as a political party, as a government in waiting, if it were to be given the opportunity to govern, the people should be satisfied and happy to know it will be based on Christian values and principles. That means it's a good basis. It's not like a regime that overthrows an elected government, that comes in, that has no basis other than the word of two people. That's not what we need. That's not what we want. So I think we need, again, bring it back into the context. So Mr. Qarase and I have spoken about this. I feel that he's been totally misquoted, and they really having a shot at him because it's politics. But Mr. Qarase also knows, like I know, every word you utter can be misconstrued and used in a different way. But when we have the opportunity to, we just simply tell it as it is and then leave it to the people to make that informed decision.
Mr. Beddoes, so what you said is that...
Do you believe the law should treat us all equally? There is light at the end of the tunnel. Reclaim Fiji. Vote SODELPA. Vote 317.
SODELPA, in its manifesto, is not highlighting that Fiji should return to being a Christian state, and is SODELPA supporting a secular state?
No. Secular state is a reference that is being used by the regime. Okay? SODELPA is not supporting a secular state, but neither is it advocating a Christian state. It is simply saying that SODELPA wants Fiji to be governed based on the principles and values of the Christian faith. And that is the faith of the majority of the population in Fiji. And that's what they're saying. Short and sweet. There's no other connotation in it. There's nothing else that, everybody's saying everything else, but that's the bottom line. And it's here. It's in this. It's in our, manifesto. It's clear as daylight. All you have to do is read it and you can understand that any suggestion that SODELPA is going to develop a Christian state is just that, a suggestion. It is not the position of SODELPA.
Mr. Beddoes, these three issues brought out more recently, Christian state and the statement by Qarase on equal citizenry and God giving Fijians the land here, and extracts from the Quran. People, look at it as the old tactics used by SDL, creating fear, bringing back iTaukei values. Are you trying to say that it's been misconstrued, like you were saying?
Totally, absolutely. Listen, let's get one thing straight. The only time we have trouble in this country is when we have military-backed coups. Then the whole country goes upside down. And then we go backwards. And the people suffer. And then we go through this whole rigmarole of trying to get it back to where we were. And that happens every time we have these upheavals. The Taukei community, let's be factual and clear about it, is the majority community in Fiji. All right? And therefore, a lot of what they say and what they would like done, people should consider that and look at it. And they are the host indigenous community. But we should not confuse the fact that they are the indigenous community, and we also have, like, we go back to the rights. I know that's not the question you're asking me, but these are all separate issues. The indigenous rights, our rights, human rights, and the equal citizenry that they talk about in here, and I've already covered it. It doesn't exist. And so, no, the SODELPA that I'm talking about is not going back to anywhere. The fact that these issues have risen comes from the fact where you asked me the question. Mr. Qarase, making reference to the Quran, you said, made a racist comment. He made no such thing. He made no racist comment. It's the interpretation by the media of what was actually said that is causing this furor. Now, whether that's deliberate or unintentional, time will tell. And I've tried to explain to you that I've read and I've heard the audio, I've seen the video, and I've heard what Mr. Qarase is saying, and he has been quoted out of context. Okay, those are the facts. The SODELPA, if the SODELPA manifesto, if one were to take the time to read this, you would see that there's nothing in here that suggests we're trying to create a Taukei-only state or whatever it is. But acknowledging that the Taukei community are the majority community. Let us not forget the huge number of decrees that have been put in place that have denied them the right. And let us not forget that as we are sitting here talking today, they are still in place today, and we're only 30-odd days away from an election, decrees that do not allow you or me any redress in a court of law today. Now, how in heaven's name can somebody call that equal citizenry? Right? That's nothing equal about it. And that's unfair. Any law in any country, as far as I'm concerned, including Fiji, any law that exists, any citizen should have a right to redress if they feel aggrieved by that law, or if in the context of that law they are somehow injured or they incur a loss or anything else like that. In this country today, this minute, there still exist laws that don't allow you the opportunity to take your case to the court of law. And until we get to a point where we elect a government like SODELPA that will encompass all the communities in Fiji and put in place laws that are free and fair and across the board and equal to everybody, until we get there, then of course we're going to have all these issues being raised and skewed perhaps on some occasion to promote a certain value. And the last thing I want to tell you about this, where I referred to the immunity provisions, don't you think it's odd that there's two institutions that are charged with administering and delivering the rule of law equally to all the citizens of Fiji, which is the police and the judiciary, should themselves be protected by an immunity decree? Don't you find that odd? I find that exceptionally odd, and it's unjust. They are dispensing decisions and the laws against the common people while they themselves are hiding behind an immunity. That is unacceptable. And yet, Frank Bainimarama goes around telling everybody we're all equal citizenry under this. And I'm telling you, absolutely not.
Mr. Beddoes, what happens to the UFDF? It was born in the last 8 years. Political parties were members of it. What happens to it now? You've been at the forefront of it, leading the charge for the UFDF. Have you shut down UFDF? Are you continuing that UFDF campaign?
One thing we were always sure about when we had the UFDF. The UFDF was to bring together the opponents of the regime and those who were pro-democracy organizations. That was the intention of it, still is today. The UFDF has not shut down. I'm just wearing another hat now because I'm using my political hat. And the decision was made that the parties would contest separately as opposed to under one umbrella. So that decision being the case, UFDF still exists because if in fact there may be an issue or two between the parties, and these things occur, disagreements will occur. That's politics. If we had a political platform where everybody said nice things to each other and we're all in agreement, what are we holding an election for? I mean, these are people disagree, and it's a healthy thing when we disagree because we have different points of view. There's nothing wrong with that. That's politics. But if there are issues that are of concern, then a quick call around and we have a meeting. We just had one last week, where certain matters were clarified between us. And that took a cup of coffee and a one-hour conversation, and everybody was fine with that. And so that's what we're using it for in this state. But it obviously, we knew it was going to take a backdoor step. It'll just move backwards while the political parties move in the fore because of the very nature of the activity going on today.
When does it come back?
Well, we think that there's still a place for an organization like United Front for Democratic Fiji, because our democracy has been threatened far too often, as far as I'm concerned. And so we need to then expand its role, perhaps, and try to make it really mold together a unified, multiracial, grouping that everybody can look up and say, yeah, okay, I'm happy. I know my future and my family's future in good hands because we got a good team up there. And I suppose there is still a possible role for it. Right now, the emphasis, of course, as you will appreciate, is on the elections and seeing who's going to win. So some of us who are talking today may not be there after September the 15th. But if we are, then that's the vehicle to go in. So, yeah, it's still there, but it's just not that active because the action right now is in the hands of the political parties.
Mr. Beddoes, this is the final question. Qarase's issues and comments that have been made, reports that have been published, has been damaging to SODELPA. I mean, people have, I'm not talking about the iTaukei, but other voters that you may have attracted. It's created a sense of bad taste that, they're now looking at reports and saying, oh, I would have thought about SODELPA, but now they would look away.
Well, perhaps that is and perhaps that isn't. But I can tell you what I'm doing is I hand out at the beginning of my little talk a little survey. I tell them who they are, just write down no names, what party they're thinking of supporting, and whether the information I'm giving is good, blah, 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 and a few other questions, how many voters in each family, that type of stuff. And then at the end, how do they feel, having heard what I had to say? Whether or not they found it useful, and did it have any impact on how they thought, having come in and then when they go out. And I'm happy to tell you that I have a 53+% strike rate, whereas, and that includes people sitting inside my meetings coming from FIJI First, and they're leaving, not being part of FIJI First. The truth is a very powerful tool, and that's all I'm talking about. So, yes, people, and there are some people who came in who weren't too sure. And let's not forget, we have had no political activity for 7 years. That's a long time. That's a long time. And political parties have only had the last 2 months to crank up and get going and start to get their message out. And we still have an uphill battle with a free and fair and open media. We still have a problem with that. And this is 30 days out from the election. All right? So people need to understand and put that all into perspective. So when they say, oh, you guys are not making statements, I can reel out at least 100 statements. As you know, I think you get copied on it, and everybody else get copied on it, and then you relate that to what the actual news item is. 95% of what we send out doesn't even see the light of day. So that's the odds that we are faced up with. So the way to go is pocket meeting, door to door, talking to people, and like I say, I'm doing an open survey, and it's just a little survey I'm doing to make sure that I know I'm on track, or whether I'm getting carried away this way or whatever, whether they don't like the information. And then I'm now, as I finish one meeting, I'm getting calls, and more people are wanting me to go and have meetings with them all over the place, and that's what we're trying to do. So once the people hear the truth about certain issues, and I tell them where my facts come from. I show them the actual budgets of the government I carry with me from 2012. I have it from 2002. So all the facts that I write about and refer to come from there. So if I say, if Mr. Bainimaram and Khaiyum call me a liar, then their document is a lie. I'm not lying. I'm just translating the information into a simple term and hand it to the people. Once they start to read this, then they get pretty annoyed about the fact that and I tell them, it's a huge con. This election, this is orchestrated by Qorvis. Make no mistake about it. This is orchestrated by Qorvis, and all this razzmatazz, and a good example for you. All the big rallies that FIJI First had, 1,000 people, banners, flyers, this, merry-go-round, everything you can, FIJI First all over the place. SODELPA asked to have a walkathon. And you saw that, you must have seen in the blogs, that list of restriction, only 70 people, none this, you can't do that, you can't do this, can't do that. Well, while the SODELPA youth may have been disappointed, I'm delighted, because it shows that they're afraid. They know what will happen if they gave us the same opportunities in terms of the permit to march or to rally as they've been allowing Frank and his people to do, because it will send a bad signal to the people in the regime. And they're disallowing it, and they call that fair, equal citizenry. Some can rally and have a whole big hoopla of a event, and the youth are only allowed to have 70 people there. That's absurd, but that is the reality on the ground, and we're up against this. So, you know, at the end of the day, it will all depend on the people. And they're going to make their decision. I know they're going to make the right decision. And it's our job as quickly as possible, and everybody's been working hard at it to get the truth out there, get the facts out there. And I believe that they'll make the right decision at the end.
Tired of living below the poverty line? There is light at the end of the tunnel. Reclaim Fiji. Vote SODELPA. Vote 317.